This story happened on a summer night in Australia when I was about 15. A bit of backstory. A guy I went to school with was a complete dick to my best friend Jake and sometimes to me. He was pretty sneaky about it and never got into trouble, and we could never prove anything. So eventually we got fed up and thought of a way to get back at him without getting into trouble. We decided to stockpile as many dead toads as we could find. They're an introduced species here and a huge pest. We'd keep them in my dad's freezer, and then sneak up to the guy's house and throw them all over the place. Then in the morning, he'll wake up with dead, rotting toads everywhere. Really stupid and immature, I know. So one night, we finally decide we have enough ammo. We get everything ready and ride up to his house, which was in a really hilly, annoying part of our suburb. But because of all the hills, it makes for an easy getaway, so we persevere. We got to his house around 11:30 p.m. and sneak up and scatter the dead toads all over the place. But right as we're about to leave, Jake decides to throw a frozen toad at the house, and it went straight through a window with a loud smash. We jumped on our bikes and took off, absolutely flying down the windy roads in the dark. Eventually, we got to a section of road where we had made a shortcut through some trees and bushes. It's about 30 meters of fairly thick brush and trees from the main road, with a 2-lane highway on the other side. It's pretty secluded, so we felt safe. We were sitting there on our bikes on top of a small hill leading down into the highway underpass, chatting and laughing in the dark, feeling pretty happy with ourselves. There were no lights, just the moon, and the occasional car headlights on the highway beside us. We started talking about what we should do for the rest of the night, when I could have sworn I heard something moving in the bushes about 10 to 15 meters away. As soon as we stop talking and listen, it stops. So we think nothing of it and keep chatting. But eventually, I hear it again. Jake doesn't believe me and is calling me a pussy and laughing, but I can still hear it. We're just sitting there in the dark on our bikes, looking into the darkness, when a fucking huge man just stands up from behind some bushes, wearing nothing but some black tracksuit pants. This guy was huge. He had to be around 7 feet and 300 pounds. He had a thick black mustache and long black hair, and he just started sprinting at us. We took off pedaling as fast as we could towards the underpass, and I could hear this guy's footsteps right behind me. I don't know if it was just the fear getting to me. Maybe I was hallucinating or imagining or something, but I could have sworn I could feel his hand swiping at my back. His footsteps sounded easily close enough for him to grab me, so maybe he did almost get a hold of me. Luckily, my friend and I have been riding BMX for years, because at the bottom of the hill, you go through some metal barriers to stop motorbikes from riding on the path, and then immediately turn left into the tunnel under the highway, or get through the barriers and go up another hill. This massive human is still right behind me, growling and swearing at me as we go down this hill, and Jake is right in front of me. We get through the metal barriers, and he turns left to go under the highway without saying a word. So I just grit my teeth, go straight and power up the hill as fast as I can. I'm almost in tears, praying to anyone or anything that would listen, when I realize I don't hear him anymore. I look back down the hill towards the tunnel, and I see him just standing there, staring at me. I will never forget it. We both stared at each other for a few seconds, and all of a sudden he just sprints off into the tunnel. I was so scared because I had no idea where my friend was. This all happened before every person had a cell phone. I rode as fast as I could to a service station where I thought he might end up, since the tunnel under the highway kind of leads that way. And sure enough, there he was. We were shaking and freaking out, trying to figure out who the fuck that guy was, because we both knew it wasn't that kid's father. We knew what he looked like, and it was nothing like that monster of a man who had just chased us in the dark. Still to this day, I have no idea who that dude was, and I've never seen him ever again. But I'm so fucking glad he never caught either of us. I still wonder what would have happened if he did. I do electrical work for a living, and I've been working in old Baltimore lately. and most of the buildings in Baltimore are connected by tunnels. So about a few months ago, I was working on a building on East Redwood Street, putting lights in the tunnels. Well, one day on my lunch break, I decided to walk around. So I'm walking for about 20 minutes when I thought I heard my foreman call me down one of the halls. I assumed he went to look around as well. So I start to walk down the hall, and it started to get deeper and colder. I think about turning around because I don't want to get lost, and then I hear it again, so I go a little deeper. Eventually, I hit a room about the size of a basketball court, with a really high ceiling. The ground is all sticky, and every step I take sounds like I'm undoing a heavy Velcro strap. There are small animal skulls in there, in the shape of a big triangle, that points to a very large dog-like skeleton. At this point, I'm freezing and really scared. I start to smell a harsh burning smell, and hear what sounded like a big dog running on concrete. I can hear it get louder and closer. Louder and closer. I start running like I never have in my life. Finally, after what felt like 10 minutes of running at full sprint, I run into a staircase with a big, heavy metal door at the end of it. I hear the noises gaining on me. It's right around the corner. So with all my might and adrenaline-fueled strength, I rip the door open and slam it behind me, and then hear and feel a hard thud against the door. I turn around to see I'm standing under the docks by the Four Seasons and the Marriott Hotel. I call my boss and tell him I got lost in the tunnels and need to get picked up. Since that day, I refuse to go in the tunnels under Baltimore. I don't remember my exact age when I found it. Maybe around 7 or 8 years old. I know I was young. But before I dropped the bomb, a quick backstory. My siblings and I didn't have the most parental supervision growing up, so that allowed me to explore and roam free through the surrounding neighborhoods and parks more than some, of which I took full advantage. My parents divorced when I was no more than 4 years old, mainly because my dad was a severe alcoholic who couldn't get out of bed without having a drink, which is in no way relevant to this story. My mother was left to raise the three of us on a legal secretary's salary, while my dad went to rehab, so my parents were going through their own struggles. I'm not knocking them at all. They did a fine job with what they had to work with. But with my mom trying to juggle so many responsibilities at once, it understandably left the door open for me to explore. With that said, I grew up near Minneapolis, Minnesota. During one rare snowless day, I was aimlessly exploring, which brought me to a park about a mile from my home, which is like a light year to a 7 or 8-year-old. I think I was with someone else, some other kid drifter, but can't recall for sure. I remember this park had a distinctly large hill, great for sledding. I once plowed into a tree there. It also had a little shallow creek which flowed into a sewer with a secret. The sewer's opening was like a small tunnel, just big enough for a young boy to walk into, and it extended underground beneath the park in a straight line. The light carried a little way into the sewer's opening, but it got dark quick, really dark, like murder dark. It wasn't uncommon to test my bravery by seeing how far into the dark sewer I could walk without shitting my pants in fear. I should mention that this was around the time that Jacob Wetterling had disappeared. His disappearance was the first time I had ever heard of child abductions. He was around my age, too, so this especially added to the creepy vibe. I remember being freaked out and worried about being kidnapped a lot at that time, even though it didn't happen anywhere near where I lived. It was in some rural area 80 miles from the city. My young mind had no awareness of distance. It happened down the street for all I knew. During this particular game of bravery, I was slowly shuffling into the sewer. That's when I discovered there was another mini tunnel to my left, about 10 feet in, where the light was still illuminating the way. It was on the wall, but much too small to travel through. That's when I saw something. I noticed an object, just laying there in the entrance of the mini sewer, like it was put there. As I approached, I remember thinking it was a fish or something, but oh how wrong I was. As I got closer, I kept keenly inspecting it and noticed it was fleshy, with veins sticking out of one end. Fear slowly consumed me as the reality of what it was hit me. I was staring at a severed human penis. I wish I could tell you that I ran to the police, or that I ran home to tell my mom and she called the police, but I honestly don't remember. I do know that I never went back there, but I didn't tell anyone for years, and it wasn't intentional. It was just so surreal, I guess. I must have just chalked it up to part of our game of bravery we played, like it was make-believe or the wild imagination of a child. Although I know it wasn't my imagination. To me, it's still down there, still a secret of that sewer, and it will haunt it until that sewer is no more. That day, I know I saw something horrible. I know this story's not as creepy per se as a lot of others, but I do know one thing. Whoever put that wiener there, in that spooky sewer, whether it was yours or someone else's, I would prefer not to meet. This happened to me in 1998. I'm sure some of you are familiar with the author Dean Koontz. I was a big fan of his books during my teen years. I still am to an extent. So you can imagine how excited I was to hear that his book Phantoms was being made into a movie. I didn't quite mark the date on my calendar or anything like that, but I knew that I'd be one of the first ones in the door to see it. Before I go on, it's important for me to explain that I lived only a few blocks from the mall. Marley Station Mall, Glen Burnie, Maryland. To be honest, I always thought that it was a bigger mall than one would expect to be in an area like ours. It never got really busy there, except on weekends maybe. But as a teenager, I considered myself lucky to have a place to go hang out, work, eat, watch movies, even if the place was dead on some nights. As much as I wanted to make the weekend premiere of Phantoms, I ended up missing it. I was still determined to go, so I went ahead and ordered a ticket over the phone for the late-night Monday showing, then packed a few cans of Coke in my Jinko jeans and headed out the door. The theater ended up being almost empty, maybe 2 or 3 people besides myself. I took a seat in the middle and watched what I thought to be one of the best and creepiest horror movies I had ever seen to that point, besides Dawn of the Dead. The film let out. I guess it was roughly around 12:45 to 1:15 a.m. Everything is closed and no one is around. I walk out the back door, the one that's for employees only, because it would save me a few minutes walking home. The exit led to the back parking lot. It's a decent-sized mall, so the lot is pretty big. So all I see is a huge empty lot, and beyond that, nothing but pitch-black woods. The lighting from the parking lot was fairly dim. Most of them were off. Some were even flickering. No ambient light or sound from the highway around the front side of the mall bled back here. It's also cold, so I'm shivering slightly as I start walking through this empty parking lot. My goal is to make it to the tree line and then follow that around to the highway. All I can hear is my own footsteps and breathing. Then I see something, about 30 feet in front of me. It's sitting in the shadows between the Swiss cheese-shaped light pattern. It looks to be the size of a small cat. I stop. I think it's moving, but it's dark. It's cold and I'm alone. I've just watched a pretty scary film, so it's probably nothing. Nothing but my mind fucking with me. I start to think it's probably an empty fast food bag or a crumpled up t-shirt. So I keep walking, determined not to change my course over something so stupid. Wait, it is moving. I stop again, and then logic kicks in. It's windy out. Whatever it is, it's not alive. And so I continue. Then this thing suddenly lunged at me, about 4 feet in a matter of seconds. The wind had died down right before it happened, so I knew that wasn't it. And at the same time, I knew it wasn't a cat or a possum, or anything normal. I jumped back and wanted to run, but thought it would chase me. So what did I do? I took a step toward it like a boss. I was thinking, fuck you, dark, scary moving thing in the parking lot. For each step I took, it seemed to take a step too. Well, not really a step, more like a scatter. It entered the light and was about 5 feet from me. And let me tell you, I didn't have a clue what the fuck this thing was. It was the size of a sewer rat. It was insect-like. It had 6 to 8 legs, pretty long antler feeler things, and the eyes were more like a crab. They were shiny, solid, and black, on stalks that were retracted and pushed forward. It had wings like a wasp. Its body was covered in a striped black-tan fur, and there were 3 smaller ones huddled next to it. It must have only been a few seconds that we looked at each other, but I'm telling you, it felt like way longer. Then suddenly it flapped its wings and shot off towards a sewer tunnel in the woods at high speed. I assume the smaller ones took off too, because all that was left was a shiny, wet trail on the ground from where it had scampered towards me. I ran home. That was the last time I ever went to a late movie at the mall alone, and the last time I ever left past dark without having a ride. I still don't know what the hell that thing was. Hey guys and ladies, thanks for watching. If you want me to tell your story or read a creepypasta, email me at the address in the description. Come follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Corey Rhino. Be good to animals, even people. Sup. I figured we'd do a story time, so gather around and keep your mouth shut. Ripley, cue the damn music.
Story time.
This happened in high school. We must have been freshmen. And I had one of those water balloon launchers. It's like a slingshot or whatever. It takes 3 guys or 3 people to use it. Two stand still and hold the sides, and one guy pulls it way back. So it was pretty late, and we were idiots. We were on this dark street by my house, and we're like shooting water balloons at cars that are driving by. You know, we were like halfway down the street, but so we're like, you know, my 2 buddies. We're gonna call them Dan and Seaver. So Dan's he's pulling it so far back he's laying down in the street, and we're missing cars by like, I don't know, they're flying right over the top of them. So we get ready waiting for someone else, and I had told them, no matter what, don't let go of this thing. I don't want to lose it, or we can't just leave it laying here in the street. So Dan's pulling it back really far, laying on his back, and the car comes into view. It's this truck, and like I recognize it right away. So Dan lets go of it. The water balloon hits fucking hard, like this deep thud on this truck, and we all knew who it was. We dropped the slingshot thing and took off running. It was some dude that was I don't know, he might have already graduated, but he would have beat the living fuck out of us. So we took off. Seaver runs to the left. We're in like behind my house was like a dirt alley, and then there are streets like perpendicular to that. And so Seaver runs and goes left while I follow Dan. He goes to the right. I see him jumping over a chain link fence, so I jump over too. In fact, he got stuck upside down like by his belt for a second, but so we jump over this fence, and there's like a fifth wheel, or like a fifth wheel RV kind of thing on like cement, but it's pretty low to the ground. It was like maybe 2 feet off the ground, so we crawled under that. We see headlights creeping up the alley, and we're like, fuck. Like he's gonna catch us, you know? So anyway, he goes by us. So then we waited for a bit, And then the dog that lived at this house we were at in the backyard came out and was barking. So we got out of there, out from under there, jumped back over the fence, and went to my house. It turns out that the dude went to my house looking for our other buddy because he knew that someone lived there that was like younger. And but the best thing is that when we met up with Seaver, he's this huge Indian guy with like a long mullet. But he was always like saying crazy shit that clearly wasn't true. Like we'd watch a movie and then he would say at the end, he'd be like, "You know the janitor in the movie?" I'm like, "Yeah." And he's like, "That's my uncle." And I'm like, "Why didn't you say anything like 2 hours ago?" And I remember one time someone was gone from class and the teacher's like, "Where's so and so?" And this dude's all, "She moved to Alaska." But like he's going to find out the next day that you were lying. And anyway, so we meet back up with him and he tells us that that guy was coming down the alley. Well, he had climbed up like this, he climbed up some barn or some building. By the way, there was no building that was that tall in the alley behind my house, but so he's not climbing anywhere. I guarantee it. And so anyway, he says he climbed up and was holding on like to the ledge of the roof. And that dude drove up and stopped and got out and started saying like, "I'm going to get those guys," or some shit. Like you wouldn't notice a big giant Indian guy with a mullet hanging off the side of a building. So anyway, he never knew who it was, and he was always nice to me too. So sometimes when I'd see him and he'd be talking to me, I'd be thinking, if you only knew that that was me that drilled your truck with a fucking water balloon. So anyway, that was Storytime.
Storytime. Ja, snälla, Bergsbus, Rish.